to the Hopetown podcast. I'm your host, Chris. I'm the program coordinator here at Hopetown. And in today's episode, we're diving deep into a personal and powerful story. I'll be interviewing Zoey St. John, the daughter of our CEO, Ted St. John. Zoey's here to share her unique perspective on growing up with a father in recovery. Her experiences offer invaluable insights into the challenges and the triumphs of navigating family dynamics, resilience, and hope. Stay tuned for an honest, heartfelt conversation that sheds light on the journey of recovery from the eyes of a loved one. Let's get started. Last week, I interviewed your dad.
Yes.
And I don't know if did you get a chance to look at it or not?
I listened to the part about me.
Okay, of course.
Of course. So, yeah.
Okay, cool. So the cool part was he talked a lot about his personal recovery and how you played such a big part in that, you know?
Yeah.
He talked about this like turning point moment when he decided, hey, I need to clean my life up. I need to get sober. I need to figure this thing out. And it was when you were like 4 years old in the car.
Yep.
Do you remember that, by the way?
I don't remember it. He recently told me that story in the last like 2 years or so. That was the first time I heard it. I never really knew that was the breaking point before that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which, I'm a dad, and so like for a father, there's something that your daughter does within you. Like I remember when my daughter was born, you know, in my late teens, early 20s, I had this like intensity in me that like, oh, I could kill somebody if I had to.
Yeah.
That went away as I started to mature. And then I remember holding my daughter after she was born thinking, yeah, I could do that shit if I had to.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's like you'll almost do anything for your daughter, you know.
Yeah.
As you listened to that video and as you listened to your dad talk about you and like how not only you played a huge part in the turning point of his life and sobriety, but you still play a big part in his life. Like, how does that make you feel?
Very emotional. I think I'm understanding it more the older I get, because like I was younger and like there was definitely some struggles with being like, I tried to be perfect for my dad in the ideas of what I could be, and it wasn't like he didn't need that. He didn't need me to not try things and do things, but it always was that for me. I thought that's what it needed to be. So now that I'm older and like he can accept me for where I'm at and I can accept him for where he's at, I appreciate it so much more, and it makes me very emotional. Yeah, because like I just see the love he has for me and like the things that he's done to like be able to provide for me and like just provide for himself. But when it solely comes down to like he wants to make a good life for me and like show me something that like I can look up to, like that's amazing. That's huge.
Yeah. Does that like, how does that change the way you view your life and operate your life?
I mean, it's definitely, whenever I am upset and need a like time to like just kind of like control myself again, I say the Serenity Prayer. So that's not something that like kids would automatically do, but like I grew up going to NA meetings with my dad, and I learned the power of the Serenity Prayer and like how like just grant me the serenity to accept things I cannot change. Like I can't change this right now, so I just need to accept what it's for and just kind of go on with it. Yeah. Where like no one that's not in the recovery community is going to be like, oh yeah, that's what I'm doing. Sure. Like I've just been so immersed in it for so long.
Yeah. So like when you were really little, I guess one of the questions I have is like, how did your dad explain to you what recovery was? Like, did you just start going to meetings or like, what was it like?
So I was the little girl growing up, going to the NA meetings with my dad. One of my best friends at the time, my dad was her sponsor. So me and her, we would have play dates while my dad was in the meetings. And like, I didn't know how deep it was like until like now, like looking back, where it's like, these people were in very dark times of their lives. And like, I was just having the best time of my life, like meeting them, being like, hi. And like, that was probably really nice for them too, seeing like a little kid being so like, oh hi, like do you need me to get you anything, like blah blah blah. But it was definitely different, and I didn't realize always, but it was just my normal too. Like I was thinking about this more recently. Like I remember my best friend growing up, like it was very different like lifestyles. Like her mom was a bartender and my dad was in recovery, and I remember telling her like, alcohol's a drug, like my dad can't drink alcohol, like it's a drug. And she's like, we're 10. She's like, what do you mean alcohol is a drug? Like everyone drinks alcohol. Like it's not a drug. And I'm like, well, for my dad, it is. Like, he can't have alcohol. Like, that's the whole point of this all. And she was like, okay, like, whatever. But it was just so weird for her because that wasn't, like, how she was brought up. It was just such a drastic, like, change from, like, alcohol. My mom's going and pouring drinks for people. Like, that, what do you mean? That's how she's making her living. But it's like, my dad can't do that. And it was just very different lifestyles.
Yeah. What are, What's one of the earliest memories you have of your dad's recovery journey?
Probably the meetings or like with Beetle. We spent a lot of time with Beetle when I was younger, and so that was my dad's sponsor. So he was, especially because I was younger and my dad was early in recovery, like Beetle was crucial. So like we would go to things with Beetle. I was meeting so many people in recovery.
Was he like a grandpa figure to you?
Oh yeah. Like when my parents asked me at a young age, like who, if anything ever happened to us, like where would you want to go? Who would you want to take you? And my answer was Beetle. Like he was so important to our family, just the role that he had. Cause my dad's dad wasn't around. Like he passed away when I was younger and they didn't have a great relationship. So like Beetle was that for us, for sure.
Yeah. So what are some things you remember about Beetle and the impact that he's made on your life?
The way he talked, he was very just direct and crazy, like kind of shaky. Like he was just telling you how it is, very just out there. And like no one is out there in their recovery like my dad and Beetle and stuff like that. And it's needed. People need that to see like, I'm going to be okay. And I could do this maybe, or like I have people to support me. Yeah. And so just having that, and I know, just especially after he passed, I saw how many people he had just influenced in his life, and it just goes to show, like, just being out there and showing your story, like, it really helps people.
Yeah. So like the level of transparency that Beetle and your dad had in their lives, like, really impacted you.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. How did your dad's recovery shape your view of him as a role model, like as a father? Like, imagine like if he wasn't in recovery and like knowing that he is, how did that shape the way you view him?
I feel like I went through multiple different stages of it, like as I've grown up, because like being the 14, 15-year-old who wanted to maybe try some alcohol and experience that, there was a little bit of resentment just because I knew that like my dad's not doing this. My dad probably wouldn't accept of this, but like I'm my own person and I want to try these things. But also I had also in the back of my mind knowing like I can't go too far with this. I know that because I've seen what it has done to my parents and all the things and people around me and stuff like that. And that it has to be a drink or two or a little bit of weed here or there. It can't be to the extremes because I know what level I'll go to because I'm a lot like my father. Sure. Like it's just I'm a little mini Ted. So I know like I can't do that. But when you're 15, 16 and people are offering you things, you want to try them. So then it becomes secrets and resentment and things that I had to grow past where it's like he's going to accept me for what I am and I'm going to accept him for what he's at. But I have to be my own person and try my own thing. So it was a struggle growing up almost. Just it was more of a me thing. I didn't want to disappoint him because I know how like he feels so strongly about things and he's so important in the local recovery that like I didn't want to be like a disappointment when I knew that was never going to be the case. But like it was just it's a different lifestyle than everyone else lives. They have parents that are going and having a 6-pack of beer and it's normal, where me it's like I've never seen my dad like that. I can't even imagine my dad like that. Like I hear the stories and it's like, what? That's Ted who's like running the recovery house. Like he was handcuffed here. Like what are you talking about?
Right over there on that platform.
Like literally right over there. Like it's so weird to me. So it was definitely an adjustment growing up because it was just like I saw the normal for people and that wasn't my life. Yeah. And so I just kind of, there was just some envy there where it's like, that's normal. Like I want that. But it's not always normal. It's not always right. Yeah. It's just what society is kind of okay with at this point. So as I've gotten older too, I definitely appreciate it more and I just see how like it's impacted me and how I take those morals now and I go with it and like I don't want to push myself in those directions. I don't see it as like important for me and stuff like that. Yeah,
it's cool because Ted and I have had a few conversations about the building we're in right now and how, you know, however long, 30 years ago or whatever it was, like there's this platform over there and he was day drunk and he was he was handcuffed to it because he couldn't keep his mouth shut.
It's so crazy to me. Like,
and to know that, like, now we're running this building.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, he runs Hopetown, and Hopetown has this building, and, you know, we're eventually going to get that bench back.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know where it's at, but he does, and we're going to get it back. Yep. And it's going to be a cool piece of, you know, it's cool to, you know, part of the full circle conversation that we've had as well is, like, he grew up in this town too.
Yeah.
And so have you ever come across people that maybe know the old Ted and don't know the new Ted, and, like, what are those interactions like, and, like, kind of how explain that to me.
It is a small town, so people do see a lot. So I do see sometimes where it's like, where's this, like, drastic change from, like, the Ted in high school that I knew to the Ted now, where it's like even, like, my teachers, because we've had some of the same teachers because we went to the same school, like, stuff like that, where it's like they were like, that crazy kid was spray painting our sidewalk with AC/DC signs, and now he's our school board member.
Yeah.
Like, what is that? Or, like, they're just so shocked in the, like, change of it all, but, like, he always had it deep down. He just didn't know what to do with it. Yeah. And so he used the drugs. Like, he always had that. He was a gifted student. Like, I actually just recently got lunch with one of our teachers, and it was the first gifted class that my dad was in. Yeah. And my grandma actually went to the school and was like, this is wrong. What are you doing? He shouldn't be here. But it was his test scores, because he was smart. He just never applied himself. He didn't have the opportunity to put himself in positions that he needed to be at when he was younger. So he took to drugs and alcohol. And so it's cool to see, like, they knew he had that in him. He just couldn't, like, emotionally do it. Like, it was just, he needed something else. He needed the drugs to cope. Yeah.
I feel like I was the same way when I was a kid. Is like, I was always told growing up, like, hey, you're really smart. You just don't apply yourself. Yep. And deep down, as I've grown older and as I've worked out my own recovery, I've realized, like, you know, I had a lot of fear.
Yeah.
I had a lot of hesitations, things holding me back that I didn't know how to deal with as a young child. And so it was like, it's not that I wasn't applying myself, it's that I literally couldn't.
Yeah, you didn't have the tools to do it. I didn't have
the tools to do it. And so I can kind of relate to that. You know, you talked a little bit about, like, some challenges you faced with your dad in recovery, like, in terms of, like, you kind of blooming and creating your own life for yourself. But were there any other challenges that you faced as a result of your dad being in recovery? Not necessarily even something like peer pressure and things like that, but like and you referred to, like, trying to live up to kind of a standard for your dad as well. But beyond that, were there any other challenges you think you faced?
It wasn't too bad. I mean, it's such a small town. I mean, everyone knew. Like, my dad's very vocal, so everyone knew that, like, my dad is in recovery and that's how our life goes. But, I mean, it was a challenge in my dad in itself, too, because he saw how alike we were and how, like, we both are very OCD, so that can go in one way or the other. You can put it to good or you can put it to bad. And he saw that in me at a young age, and he was scared in itself. And so I think that kind of went on to me a little bit, where it's like, he just had to question it. But I'm like, why are you questioning it? Why don't you trust me? But he knows the mind of an addict, so he has to question it. He just has to throw it out there for his well-being. But I'm like, what are you doing? Why don't you trust me? Like, I'm telling you I didn't do this. Why aren't you believing me? But he's like, I know my mind. Yeah. And our minds are a lot similar. So I just have to make sure. So there was a battle of kind of trust, and felt like, why don't you trust me? What's going on here? Like, I'm telling you I didn't do this, but, like, you are saying, like, you really think I did. But it's like, he's like, I know, like, where I was when I was 17 and I was going out with my friends. Like, of course we were drinking. Of course we were doing these things. But I'm like, Dad, we just went to the movies. Like, what are you talking about here? So there was a little bit of that.
Do you think there was any, like, what were some of the challenges you faced with stigma, like people's viewpoint on your dad or recovery as a whole?
I think it got better the older we got. Like, no one really said too much. They just kind of knew what it was and took it as it is. But the older we got, I thought it was pretty cool, because, like, because it was such a small town, like small school. Like I graduated with 30 kids, and so like all the kids in my class, like we were really close, especially my senior year. So like all those boys, like I saw the shift of being like, okay, like that's Zoe's sober dad, to like, oh, that's Ted and he's really cool. Like, oh, like Ted's around, like he's jacked and blah blah blah. And it's like
he thinks he is at least.
Yeah, like he thinks he is. He's all right. But like everyone, I saw the shift as we gotten older to where it's like, oh, he's not just this sober dad that's really strict. It's like he's actually really cool. He has other things on top of being sober. He's just very vocal about being sober. And like that can put people off sometimes. Like he just has to do it. That's how he is. He can't keep secrets. He has to throw it out there. But like at first people are like, whoa, who's this dude and why is he throwing his recovery in my face? But then it's like, oh, that's Ted. Like he's going to talk about it, but he's also going to mess with you. He's going to do all these things. And like, that's just how he is. And so I really appreciated the shift as I gotten older with like my guy friends and stuff, where like my dad's sending me selfies with my guy friends. He's like, oh, I just ran into so-and-so and I just ran into so-and-so and I was playing basketball down at the RFC with so-and-so. And they're like, oh, make sure your dad's at the RFC for basketball today. And I'm like, what are we talking? Like, what are we talking about right now? What's going on? So that was really cool just to see the acceptance of it all, because I personally haven't watched too much of like the stigma of it all. Like a lot of people are really supportive, which is amazing, because a lot of the other sides they're not.
Yeah. What would you say if you could give like a piece of advice to a kid, maybe 8, 9, 10 to 13, somewhere in that range, that's growing up with a parent in recovery? What would you say to someone like that?
You got to take them for what they are, and they got to take you for what you are. You're going to grow as a person, as a child, and you're going to just feel normal human things where you want to try this or you want to do this, and that might not always align with what they're doing, but they're constantly growing too. They're reworking their inner child as you're growing up. Like my dad had been using for 20, 30 years at that point. Like he was mentally before that, like he was in his 20s, like he wasn't ready, he didn't have those thoughts and things. So they're growing while you're growing. You got to take that for what it is. They're gonna make mistakes, yes, they're gonna make mistakes, but they're doing it for you.
What are some knowing like where your families come from, and what are some hopes that you have for the future? You know, is there you know, where do you see your relationship with your dad in 10, 20 years?
I am incredibly grateful for my relationship with my dad. Like I said, I didn't appreciate it when I was younger. I just was stuck in this, like, he wants me to be this way, when that wasn't the case at all. It was just my bad communication. And so now that I have a dad where I can rely on him for anything I need. If I need something, if my car breaks down, I'm like, hey, I got to get to Hope on Wheels quickly. Like, or like, just if I need money here or there, or if I just need support, if I need somewhere to go, I know he's there for me, and I know he's going to break it down in a way where we can solve this problem no matter what. And people don't have that always, where it's like they have someone to support them, but my dad is there for me in a way that like a lot of people don't get because of this recovery.
Yeah. I got one final question for you, and it's a heavy one.
Okay.
So you ready?
Yeah.
If you could thank your dad for one specific thing related to his recovery journey, what would that be? I know there's probably a lot that you could thank your dad for, but sum it up for me.
Being a better father than he had. He didn't have that, and that was a big part of him doing what he did. Is he had a father that was schizophrenic, homeless. Like he was wondering if his dad was going to be in that garbage can picking out trash. Like, so just to have the support that I know he didn't get is amazing for me. And I just know that he would do anything to keep that, and he has done everything to keep that. So just knowing that he is breaking generational curses for me is amazing.
That's huge.
Yeah.
I mean, I look at the relationship you and your dad have, and you know, my daughter's only 2.5.
Yeah.
And she's in the middle of her terrible twos right now, and so sometimes dad's her favorite, and sometimes she can't stand me.
Yep.
But it's like, as she grows, I personally look to your relationship with your dad, and I'm like, man, that's something I want with my kid.
Yeah.
I want to be able to, I want to make her proud, and I want her to know that, I want her to be able to see my heart.
Yeah.
And see that I love her and I will do anything for her. And I feel like you can see that with your dad too.
Oh yeah.
He loves you and cares about you, and he would do anything to.
His office in his house is a shrine of me. So like it's a little out there, but it's the best thing I could ask for real.
That's great. Well, thank you for sharing everything.
Yes.
I think that this is going to be impactful because not only on this podcast do we want to interview people that are in recovery, but we want to interview like family members too.
Yeah.
We want to interview people that have different perspectives and can bring different perspectives to what it looks like to have a recovery journey. So
yeah, it's so important. And it's not always shown. So
yeah,
I love it.
Yeah. Well, we'll have you back on
Yes.
soon.
Hell yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.